Very just
Oh,
got the recording message. All right, we'll start this from the top. So thank you everyone for joining us at another session of MSP Initiative Live. I'm very excited to be joined here by Danny O'Hanley and Segall Panther of Delmar Insights. If this is your first time here, I'm going to go through a couple little things. I do have a fun announcement to kick everything off, and then we'll kind of get into the nitty gritty of Delmar and some of the problems that they're solving the MSP channel every day. So I'm your host today. I know you're probably used to George Bardisi. He is, I believe, in the air right now, potentially on the ground in Denver, visiting our friends out at PAX 8. But we're going to keep things rolling, keep the information going, and hopefully talk to some of our MSP friends on here. So again, I'm Alex Standard, VP Business Development at BVoIP. Been with BVoIP MSP Initiative since the beginning. So excited to be back on here. It's been a little bit, and it's a great day to do it. So Danny, I know you're joining us and Segall as well in Orlando in November next month. So we're going there for a pretty good party. And I know you made last year. We had the All American Rejects last year. I know there's been a huge buildup on what the band will be, and actually it's going live as we speak right now, which is pretty fun. So excited to say we're going to have Ezra Ray Hart join us. So that's going to be Sugar Ray, Better Than Ezra, and Tonic formed together to make a 90s super band. So definitely a little bit of the best of everything. That 90s era, we're going to get all of their music, which I believe is 18 top hits, almost 6 million monthly viewers on Spotify. I mean, it's a really good mashup. And then on top of that, we have all the other hits that they play. So across the board, I think we'll hit pretty much all music styles, and should be a pretty epic night.
I'll tell you what, if it's anything like the last one, it's gonna be a good time. There's no doubt.
Appreciate it. I had to wear my old red hat because obviously excited to get back there. I think you and I grabbed this at the end of the concert last year during cleanup as the hurricane was fully hitting, which knock on wood, hopefully none of that this year.
Yes, hopefully lightning will not strike twice. I will say though that they were super accommodating. Aside from just the venue being a great place to host a concert, it was a blast.
Couldn't agree more. Yeah, huge shout out to that team there. They were awesome to work with, and just provided a great venue overall. I mean, All American Rejects loved it. They said they had a really good time. Said the crowd was good. So we're gonna need everyone to bring that energy again. Have a lot of fun. We might be tweaking some of the fun other stuff that we're doing. So last year we had like an ice beer wall. We're talking about an ice luge instead. Always fun. Karaoke is coming back. That was a huge hit. I believe the games will be back. So quite a few, the fun things from the past, and then maybe some of the new ones. I unfortunately cannot bring the pirate ship that we just had in Miami. Hard one to transport, but we will find a good way to bring that fun. So actually, you just were there, right?
Yeah, the pirate ship was pretty awesome with eye patches and all. It was a good time.
Awesome. So how was the show?
The show writ large was, I thought it was actually really good. I mean, obviously there was a lot of concerns going into it from folks who had been at years past about different locations and how we're going to fit everybody, but more or less, everything was within a reasonable walking distance. The content, I think, was spaced out well. So for the most part, at least from my perspective, it went off without a hitch.
That's great. Yeah, I mean, it was probably fun for you to get into that Autodesk community, and because obviously you had exposure to the data community because of your background, which we'll get to in just a second here, and you had a couple years now of being around that ConnectWise community, so it's probably fun for you to embrace kind of a whole other community there for you. And I believe you've been rolling out. Do you have the integration on that side as well now, or?
Yes, we do.
Awesome. So there you go. Oh, good.
I was going to say, and currently in the midst of launching our Halo.
Very nice. Yeah, definitely one we're hearing a lot of. So, I mean, I think that's a good segue. Danny, I've been lucky enough to know you for a number of years now, but why don't you give us a little bit of your background, kind of where you came from? How about where's the company based? Where'd you come from? What's your pathway into the MSP community? And then we'll get into a little bit of Delmar and what you guys are doing.
Yeah, I mean, so the company is based in my hometown in Richmond, Virginia. That's where I am right now. But the story that led me into the MSP community and to launching Delmar was probably a much more global one. Fair to say, I well had an interesting career start. I was a 2008 graduate, so I had the opportunity to graduate into a global recession, which was
Always fun.
always a good time, right? I had actually just come off of a summer abroad. I'd spent some time in China when all this was happening, and sort of arrived back to the world that we all knew it in 2008 post Lehman. So it took some time to kind of figure out what was next. Had some fun along the way, but at the same time, kind of got started with a small company in the area. At the time, that's one of the nice things about small companies is that oftentimes they can be recession proof, right? They tend to be operating at their own pace, right, with their own goals, and they're not necessarily as heavily impacted at the macro level. So anyways, started with the a distributor. And I mean, not they were in residential and commercial security. Honestly, I look at it now and I feel like it was not too dissimilar to many of the MSPs that we talked to. They started with for this company, it was a sort of a focus in sales and marketing, and then as they grew, they needed to do more, right? And having gotten into the ground level, they asked me to start their customer service department. We built that up. And as I started to move into management in a small company, the wall that I ran into was not really understanding how to make better decisions. Not that I couldn't make, gut decisions. Like we all have our own gut feelings about what we think the right thing is to do, but I wanted to make better, predictable decisions using the information that was available to me. And even when I was able to cobble together data, sometimes I just didn't know what to do with it. So, with that, I went and decided to go back to school. Spent 2 years getting my MBA, really focused on entrepreneurial finance.
Yep.
Spent some time in Silicon Valley while I was there, and then came back postgraduate, living in the New York City area, and all the while looking at startups in the tech space. And the small company who was at the time fastest growing in Connecticut reached out, saw my profile, and said, "Hey, we're moving fast. We've got roles in a lot of different areas. Why don't you come interview with us?" Lo and behold, that was Datto, right? A company that was not really familiar to me or most in the space at the time. But I walked into fun-loving young CEO, like same age as myself. Energy drinks flowing from the walls, so to speak, and just a can-do attitude throughout the building. So I was quick to jump on board, and not too dissimilar to the company that I had worked at before I went back to school. It was a situation where you could write your own ticket if you had the will and the willingness to try something that no one else in the building had tried before. Then you could chart your own path, and they certainly gave me the opportunity to do that. For me, again, it was data. It was like, okay, now I know what to do with this data, right? And here, everyone else is moving too fast to start, thinking about it in that way. So why don't I cobble together some information? It started by literally hand moving invoice data into Excel and just trying to do pivots. Quickly learned from the engineers who are like, there's this thing called SQL, and if you spend some time with it, you might be able to get this data a little bit faster. That led to larger business intelligence tools. And after some time, both in the post integration world or so, worked on the merger team for the Autotask data merger, spent a bunch of time abroad doing the exact same thing, right? Kind of getting our systems to an enterprise level and developing out intelligence across the board for the business. So, let's fast forward to where the next step took place, which was 2020, another global event, right? Pandemic took us all, I think, into a whole new world. And for me, someone who had kind of, gotten a little bit burnt out from all the international travel, I think at one point I had spent, 8 out of 12 weeks abroad, just working in that sort of post-acquisition constant world. Took the opportunity to step back and said, you know what, let's do what I always wanted to do, which is take this leap on my own, right? Use all the information that I learned from the industries that I've been in and start something. And for me, I had fallen in love with the MSP community. I think all of us that start working in this community, like it's a close-knit community, it's fun loving, right? At the end of the day, like we all have jobs to do, but we enjoy making the most of life as well. So I kind of, you know, sat down at my kitchen table, not too far from where I'm sitting right now, and said, you know, how can I help this community? How can I use what I've learned and help the community? And I think where I landed was, how do I bring enterprise level business intelligence to small and medium sized business? And that's really where we kick things off.
Love it. Yeah, no, I mean, obviously, you and I were a little bit of kindred spirits there, because I think we met when I came in and I had that sort of data support behind me, and kind of came over to the data side. And you were that kindred spirit where I was like, hey, I really wish I could see X or Y and how we're doing all these shows and the massive amount of things that data was doing at one singular time. So it was really cool to see you adapt that. And I love the idea of almost taking that data approach, right? Data took enterprise grade BDR and brought it back down to the MSP, small, medium businesses. Your BVoIP, that was kind of our goal, right? We take enterprise grade phone systems that you could use for a call center, things like that, and bring that down to that MSP, SMB stage. So I love all that. And I think that some of the best tools in the industry have started off there, right? I mean, people saw something that was really good in the enterprise. People paid an insane amount of money for it and said, I wonder if there's a way to do that for a more cost-effective way the MSPs could do, because I think they really benefit off of that, and definitely seen some really cool tools come out of that. So I love all of that. I want to give Segall some time though, tell us her background. So Segall, why don't you tell us a little bit about where you're from?
Awesome. So where I'm from specifically is actually South Africa, but have now found myself all the way in the UK. But going back to the start, sort of, grew up in a family that are full of entrepreneurs, to be honest. So, grew up with a mom who owned a marketing and events company, a dad who owned a carpentry company. And it's sort of, you sit there and you go, well, what am I going to do? I don't know what I want to do when I grow up. Do I want to do marketing? Definitely don't want to do carpentry. Had a look at what I was good at in school and went, okay, well, I'm good at accounting, good at maths, enjoyed business, have to become a CA. All right. So went to uni, did a business science degree, majored in finance and accounting, decided to do a postgraduate, do the same, sort of majored in finance and accounting, and then went on to, qualify as a chartered accountant, decided that, the next step would be to work within industry. So joined the Big Four, did a few years at EY, where my life was audit. Eat, sleep, live audit. Those memes that you see about audit, those are true. That's all you did. That's all you do. And to be honest, it's where I sort of, grew a passion for, financial statements. And, the nerd in me comes out and I go, oh, I love it. Key performance indicators, love them. Financial statements, love them. Decided to move to the UK with another audit firm. So moved over with PwC. And I think it was when I was here where, you really then start, questioning what your future holds. What is the next step? Where do I want to end up in 10 years from now? And as great as that experience was, at the end of the day, you're working for a Big Four, you're working for a big company, where do you move? How do you make a name for yourself? And how do you, help others? So, it's, you view a set of financial statements, they become the same after a while. You're in the same industry, you're reviewing the same set of financials. And I just felt like, there was more that I could do. I have, skills that I could offer. And I was fortunate enough to be in a situation where I have, mutual friends and connections who knew Danny. And Danny was out visiting, connections and friends from Datto days. And, they were like, well, I think you should meet this guy, Danny. I was like, cool, I'll meet this guy, Danny. Met Danny, had a cup of coffee, on the porch and started talking. And, we sort of started to, connect. And he was telling me all about, his his business and this goal. And Danny's so passionate when he talks about, Delmar and what it is that, he does. And he was telling me all about, where he's got to now and like all of these future goals and, everything that he still wanted to do, all of the connections he'd made, all of his partners, his clients, everything. And I sat there and I was like, I'm intrigued. This man is passionate. I want to know more, started chatting and sort of just realized that, there was this startup opportunity. Delmar had, a position available where they needed, someone with my skill set. And likewise, they had opportunities there, the startup opportunity that would allow me to sort of, do more. So I didn't have to come in and just, be there to provide insight on, financial statements and valuations. But, Danny was like, you've done some, a little bit of marketing. You grew up with marketing. You want to have a shot at doing some marketing? Okay, cool. Why not? Then you sit there and Danny's like, okay, what else are you passionate in? What else do you want to do? And, I really like that. And I sort of, ended up in a space now where, the world is my oyster, to be honest. And I feel like, I'm fortunate to be working for a company and for, a CEO who is providing me with those opportunities. And it's been fun. So all new to it, but good. So far, so good.
I love it. And good luck. That's, Danny kind of touched on earlier. Once you get into this MSP community, you can't leave. A lot of people try, they always come back. It's something about it just sucks you right back in. So enjoy your stay. It's going to be a long one. No, it is a great community. It really is. I've worked in the enterprise as well. I've worked in the small businesses, and just something about this community and the way that it operates and the way that people rise up and help each other, whether it's on the personal level, the business level, people just genuinely want to see each other succeed. And I've seen it more and more as the companies have grown and the maturity's grown and the industry's maturity has grown, is there's less of that combative, you're my competitor kind of mentality, and more of, hey, there's more than enough for all of us. How do we all rise up? I think data is going to be a huge piece of that. So, Danny, you touched a little bit about kind of, okay, this was the key trigger, and obviously Segall, your background plays a ton into this. Do you guys want to give us a little bit about what are you guys doing with MSPs today? What are the services you're offering? And then let's get into a little bit of like tips and tricks, right? I mean, obviously you guys have a plethora of info and background we could give these guys. So I'm going to pass it over to you. But before we do that, I just want to say, if you're watching Facebook, in the Zoom, whatever, drop some chats. You have some questions you want to ask these guys. This is a really great opportunity, right? These are not people you always have access to every day. So having that is always awesome, but I will probably push you to give your contact info at the end so they can bother you after this, but at least right now they get you live. So let's go jump into Delmar. Tell us about what you guys do, services, and what are the problems you're solving every day.
Yeah, I mean, so look, at the end of the day, I approached Delmar the same way that I, approached sort of the past history that we talked about. Like, there's a problem, we just want to solve it, right? I mean, we hung our original shingle as a consulting organization, and although our main area of focus is around the Delmar Business Intelligence Platform and analytics, we do still offer the consulting services, and the two sort of feed off of each other, right? Especially for some of our clients that are newer to data, right? They want to better understand that information. So, like, for example, as we continue to develop the product, we're helping other folks solve problems that maybe others haven't worked with them on before. Something you mentioned that you and I did together was sort of this idea. I had come from the sales background, and that's really where I had started from a metrics perspective. It's very much 1 + 1 = 2, right? That is a core analytical principle when it comes to starting and understanding how to grow your sales team. That said, as you go deeper, right, some of the minutiae, some of the things that maybe are more difficult to understand are like, what's the impact of going to DataCon, right? What's the impact of doing a webinar, right? How does that lead to what ultimately becomes your relationship with your customers? And that same sort of funnel metric work that we were doing together, for example, we're also starting to work with MSPs on as well, right? Whether it's understanding your marketing spend in relation to, say, what others in the industry are spending, right? From a revenue perspective or what have you. To, what does your sales team look like? I mean, even if you're a small, 5 to 10 person MSP, right? And you want to really start rationing your sales effort. And of course, you're the main guy when it comes to referrals or whatever the case may be, right? How do you then take that next step, right? And then how do you track and understand what success looks like?
Absolutely. Are you doing much work with MSPs around MDF?
It's funny that you mentioned that. We have not to date, but it's something that was brought up about a week ago, and so that conversation is beginning for sure.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, timely, I guess, for me as well. We just had our PAC meeting, and it's always something that comes up. I think MSPs don't always realize the access to MDF they have across the board with all their vendors. Like I know somehow we always have leftover every year in the budget, which feels crazy. But then you have other MSPs that every year are like, yep, we're gonna do the same exact thing again. We already got our ROI off of it. Let's do it again. But I think there's a little bit of that nervousness of, well, if I use it before I'm ready or before I know how to do something that's going to get me revenue, then I'll never be able to get it again. So I feel like understanding it and helping them with some of the trends that you guys have seen of, hey, if you buy your customers a movie, you rent out a movie theater and you do a presentation beforehand, we've seen an ROI of this. And it's a lot better than just buying them drinks, because then everybody just drinks and doesn't really talk enough. If you can kind of start to break down some of that data for people, I feel like it would help the vendors, it would help the MSPs. So it kind of, rise all ships. Kind of.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, at least from our own past, right? I mean, oftentimes vendors look at MDF as sort of a give back to the community in many ways, right? But to your point, right? If you dial it in, everyone can certainly benefit from it. And from an MSP's perspective, I mean, again, some of the more conservative MSPs that we talk to they're concerned about the investment. How much is too much? Is it going to be lost money, right? And MDF, I think, is a really great way for folks to try something new, right? Not only will you get access to professionals within the industry, right? Because you're going to be working with vendors to get that money, who are going to have ideas, and they're going to be able to tell you, hey, what has worked in the past. But yeah, even more so, again, like, it gives you an opportunity to bolster your own budget when you're ready to take a moonshot here or there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think even just that process of, how do I go about asking my vendors, right? I think that you guys would probably, as you start to work into that, have enough data to really help MSPs kind of jumpstart that conversation. And if you can arm them with some data on what's going to be most effective or more effective, it can definitely be a pretty cool area to hit.
Yeah, and I mean, look, something else I'll mention is that we are MSP industry, although again, our core efforts are designed to serve the MSPs themselves. If there are vendors out there that are looking for help understanding, where their MDF dollars are going and how it's working, that is something that we offer as a service as well.
Awesome. Yeah, no, it's important. I mean, KPIs and understanding the different pieces of your business and understanding those levers is just, I think that's really where people kind of cross over to that next level, right? It's you stop kind of the rat race mentality of, well, we just have to do a little bit more, and then I could buy, one more thing over here, and we can just keep rolling, where you can start to say, all right, MDF, for instance, right? If I do a marketing campaign, it's going to cost me X. If I send out this postcard, it's going to cost me X, but I know I can expect on average, 30% return on this. Okay, great. So I know what the spend is. You can start to pull those levers and really affect the change. And that's where you can start to forecast. You can start to get your growth in line and really just see a lot more of that. That's the maturity in the next level they're going to look for. If you're looking at, hey, I want to get bought, I want PE investment, right? I want to be that next platform MSP. Like, all of those stages are going to need to be in place. Very much where, are you seeing that a lot out of your MSPs, I guess? Are you seeing a lot of the, hey, we want to be bought down the road, we want to head towards an event, like, help me get prepared, help me understand my data better so I can be.
Yeah, I mean, so Segall sort of hinted on this a little bit when she was talking about her background and maybe some of the other projects that she's gotten to help with. But our core focus of the product from an analytics perspective is helping MSPs understand their value, right? Thinking of it from a financials perspective, what KPIs are important. And then really, I mean, before we even start talking about valuations or other services in the M&A space, I think that the first topic of conversation with any business owner, regardless of the industry, is, what goals do you have in mind, right? What are you trying to achieve? And then that ultimately leads us down the path of how do we then read these numbers, right? Or how do we then make recommendations? Because to your point, right, if they're looking to sell, right, then a track record of success and investment in the business is important. And whether or not they're receiving MDF for that, I think is somewhat irrelevant, right? It's an avenue. At the end of the day, are they reinvesting in the business, right? And then what impact is that money having? That in and of itself can be, a significant, factor in their multiplier.
Absolutely. No, I think that's definitely a huge piece of Reddit. Am I ready? I think a lot of people just kind of say, hey, I'm making X a year roughly. Do you think that this is too much to ask? And there's just so much more that plays into, right? EBITDA and how much that's coming from recurring versus break fix, and just kind of breaking all that down and understanding really what that number means, what the market average is, because we've all seen that fluctuate quite a bit over the last couple of years. So, I mean, I think all those are coming into play, and I think there's not a slow down at all, which is surprising. You'd think that with everyone staying at home and money slowing for a minute, now then speed back up, and now who knows. But you'd think that the market would cool a little bit. If anything, we're seeing the same amount, if not more, M&A than we ever have in MSPs. I mean, I think Joe over at Channel ED used to track it. I think it was somewhere in the range of like 100 plus a year. It was almost an MSP a day at one point was being purchased. It was pretty wild to see. And you're seeing a lot of that with PE investment into the space. You're seeing some of it is just roll-ups of, smaller people. You're seeing some of it with legacy, right? People who are just kind of had a good life. I made a good living off this. I'm ready to kick it by the pool with the wife and spend a little bit of time off.
Look, I mean, if I'm being honest, I've seen numbers even higher than that, depending on your definition of the MSP and how broad that we're talking about. I mean, from our perspective, we tend to work with either larger MSPs that are looking to acquire, or with smaller MSPs that are looking to get to a point where they are in fact attractive, right? And for many, that's a road, right? That's a road to travel upon, and it can take several years to get there. And maybe they don't, in which case there's another opportunity that's available to them, either internally selling to their staff, or maybe there's another opportunity in their market where they can combine forces with someone else who's ready to carry it to the next stage. Like I said, it comes back to their goals, right? But some of the things that I think you're mentioning, Alec, are really more on the realm of what is becoming defined as like the mainstream industry transactions, right? And similar to that comment that I made earlier about recession proof, I feel like our industry in many ways is still maturing in terms of M&A activity, right? As opposed to, say, what you might find on Wall Street, in which case, like, for example, the deals are becoming more sophisticated, right? There's a heavier emphasis on EBITDA, right? The EBITDA thresholds are getting higher, right? It doesn't mean that people aren't still buying, right? And more importantly, if you look around, the transactions aren't stopping because the MSPs all over the world are growing at a better rate, right? They're implementing new services in the security space that's allowing them to go deeper with their existing clients, right? So, I mean, generally speaking, on a macro level, it's a very good industry to be in right now.
Couldn't agree more.
Danny, sort of, just adding to that, I think that, although M&As are, like they do form a big part of what we do, there are also MSPs and companies out there who, aren't interested in that. And there are, people who just want to have their, business that they want to run, as long as they can, hand it over to the next generation. And, there's a big part of what we do which just helps you gain an understanding on your financial information. I think that people often overlook it and you think that, okay, as long as I've got a profit there, I'm doing what I need to be doing, but there's so much more to it. I look at it and I think, I look at my mom and I promise you every May, I know that my mom's company's financials, they've been around for 20 years, are going to come out and I'm going to get a call and she's going to say to me, please look at these financials and tell me what you think we should do. Like, how can we improve? How can we do this? And, I think so many people have those questions. It's easy to look at, your bank balance at the end of the year and see, okay, great, we've had, money come in and we've made a profit, but how can you, budget better? How do you, sort of take where you are now, look at it in its, life cycle, where the business is, and go, okay, cool. Are we in a growth stage? Are we actually growing in line with our competitors? Should we, possibly be doing a bit more? Should we maybe increase our marketing budget because our competitors are seeing a growth of X amount and we're a bit below? Or, we look at it and go, okay, you're at your, full sort of like expected life cycle now. You're at that stage where you're sort of stagnating now. So, what is the next step? Do you want to do that into, sort of perpetuality, or do you want to sort of look at what can we do? Can we bring in another service offering? Can we, adjust what we're currently offering? And these are the sort of questions that I think, if you don't necessarily have, enough financial insight, you're not asking those questions and you're not understanding where to look, so sometimes you need to just be able to sort of, sit down and say to someone, look, this is where I'm at now. This is, what we have. I feel like we're doing a good job. Am I right? Am I wrong? What can I do to better? And, I think that is a big part of what we try to do, is try and help you gain a better understanding on where you're at, what improvements can be made, how to budget better for the next year or for the future, how to identify risks, and then how to manage those risks. If you have liabilities or current liabilities that are, becoming increasingly larger, identifying that is a risk. How can we mitigate that risk? What can we do? And then also, looking at how we can, sort of bring performance benchmarks into place. So to make it easy for you to understand your financials, to better sort of achieve what your end goal is. Whether that is an M&A or not, you just want to know that, you are getting the most out of your company and that you are putting in, the best that you can.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I love that. I mean, so let's say I'm an MSP and I feel like I'm hitting that plateau, right? Things are starting to slow down a little bit. And you look at it and you say, hey, maybe you expand into a new service. Are you guys looking at it and saying, hey, Alec, you really are doing great over here in this space, but you haven't really tapped into the cybersecurity too much. And here's the growth percentage we're seeing out of other MSPs that have added identity access management and, zero trust and some of those pieces. Are you helping guide me into what other services I should be offering and kind of, helping me assess that piece of it?
Absolutely. And like maturity of the offering is definitely a topic that comes up. I mean, to this point around, like, all goals are not related to selling the business, right? Or buying another business, right? I had an MSP who grew their business during the pandemic, right? They, were mom and pop kind of, at home business because everyone was remote. And like their goal for the year was, I want an office. I want to know that we can afford an office space to move all of our people, because now that we're in a post-pandemic world, we're looking to get, into a hybrid scenario, right? Is that something that we can afford? How do we budget for it? What does our cash flow situation look like? And how will it look after we decide to take on this rent? So, I mean, it could be just about anything. Speaking of people who don't want to sell, right? I mean, we've done legacy planning with folks. I want my son to take over the business. What does that look like? Right. So at the end of the day, if you want to make pretty much any decision around the financial future of your business, understanding the numbers is at the core of it.
So now I'm going to throw a couple questions at you because I'm sure MSPs are sitting here kind of chewing on this. What would you say is the number one KPI MSP should be tracking? I guess, and I'll double that with, and is there maybe another one, or is it the same one that you feel that they're not?
Right. So it's funny. I kind of want to go with two that maybe some folks have heard of, maybe some folks haven't. And I want to go with two only because they are focused on different things, right? And different stages of your life cycle as a business owner. So one came up recently during the symposium last week, which was the rule of 40. And it sort of ties in with the same concept of what we were talking about before, which is, how much are you investing in your business, right? And really the general concept is like, it's a combination of your profitability, right, and your growth rate. And so therefore, right, getting the combined number to reach, let's say 40, right? What that means is that you don't need to be as profitable if you're growing, right? And vice versa, right? If you're incredibly profitable, but you're slower growing, right? That could also be okay, right? You could be reaching that certain level of your business arc or your market per se, right? Where then you need to either look externally, right? Or look to sell. So on the M&A side, like I'd say that's a super interesting one for folks to be thinking about right now, because it kind of encapsulates this idea of how well is my business being run? Is it being run efficiently? And at the same time, where are my growth efforts being focused and how effective are they? On the other side, for the everyday MSP, sort of the other metric that kind of comes to mind, which often comes up, is turning point. So effectively, can you run your business as you've built it today if nobody called for T&M, if all the projects shut off, nobody wanted any more product from you, right? Just purely off the back of your recurring revenue streams, could you survive? And the turning point is going to tell you the answer to that, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's a crucial one in the story. And I mean, especially with the, I want to say, uncertainty that we had, right? But we definitely never sat there in 2019 and said, I think next year we're all going to be trapped in our house for multiple months of the year. And the nice thing is, and we saw it, was our industry, you touched on earlier, recession proof is a really strong statement, but I think it's extremely resilient and kind of like medical, right? No matter what happens, you're always going to need medical. I think you're always going to need IT too, for those purposes, right? But if you're a hospital, you definitely want to make sure that all your electronics and tech is working, and that your security is great. Vegas learned that the hard way a couple weeks ago, with the MGM resorts, which unfortunately apparently was just a phone call. Phone call when somebody impersonated somebody else, and next thing you know, they had the entire network. So, good.
No, I was going to say, I am still distracted by the Vegas thing, just because we were in ChannelCon not too long before that, and again, people were already starting to test the system. It had the vibe like something bad was about to happen in Vegas, right?
Yep. I mean, it was the perfect storm. You had, Black Hat there right after us. And then you have all these other big major events, whether it's like EDC, right? Different major festivals, things like that, bring people in. And it's all leading up to F1, the first time in Vegas, which was such a major event for Vegas. The Sphere going live, right? It's just a big year. I think it's kind of perfect storm for it. But yeah, I mean, that was a real test as to why backups and security are important. I mean, talk about a place that you can truly measure your loss per minute. I mean, no place will ever be better than Vegas to measure that. I mean, I'm sure Segall's brain is going, God, I'd love to measure that.
So look, kind of coming back to, where we're at before. I mean, this mythical idea of a recession-proof industry. I mean, sure, it's not reality, right? At the end of the day, I think most successful MSPs know that flexibility is going to be the key, right? And flexibility in terms of, adaptability, right? How willing and ready are you to adapt your business based on what's happening? And something that comes to mind, sort of that post-pandemic world. I mean, just as an example, right? Unfortunately, I have spoken to some MSPs who survived off of the cash that they received, right? And when that cash started to run out and their business was set up in a way where they were just assuming that cash was going to be available, I mean, some really tough conversations had to happen. On the flip side, I've spoken to significantly more I mean, I would call them mature. It doesn't, they're not necessarily bigger MSPs. They just have a mature mindset where they were prepared to adapt, right? Where the money that they received, they steadied their ship, and then they really focused that money on reinvesting in the business.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, when the pandemic was truly over, they had grown from that investment, and they weren't depending on it anymore.
Keith says the answer to his question: stop being a cost center and start being a business enabler.
What? Sorry, which question?
Keith just said the answer to his question: stop being a cost center and start being a business enabler. I like it.
Whose question?
Yours, I believe. Either way, I like the statement. I like the idea, the mentality there. I mean, you're watching that with the more, I would say, you're watching that evolution of MSPs, right? You're seeing a lot that are diving into security services. And another big shift I've seen over the last, I joined the MSP space about 10 years ago. And within the last 5 to 10 years, probably one of the biggest shifts is that, we're not a cost for you. We're actually helping you run your business. We are part of the business. We are your quasi CTO sitting at the table. We are part of the leadership meetings. We're part of the growth meetings. You're getting a new office. I know about that well before you submit a ticket for me to move all the computers across town, right? I'm involved in that decision. I priced it out. I scoped out the project. Being involved in the business at a much higher level. There we go. It looks like, hold on. You know what? I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to allow Keith to talk if he'd like to say something. Looks like he's got a couple statements there. Hey, Keith.
Hey, how you doing, man? Sorry, I didn't know you were hosting. I
No,
was afraid to come on and listen to George talk about this weekend's games. I was actually,
Totally fair. Totally fair. Well,
he can be abusive.
you both.
I can say that I'm not his employee. No, I think the point is so many people in the MSP business are simply reselling a service. They're brokering. They're Kmart Blue Light. They train our customer to look for what's the cheapest because we're all the same. And if you own the business process, you own the business. And I've given you my examples of what we do. I mean, like for Boeing, we own the shop floor. For the ports of LA, we own the dispatch and the container tracking. Then you go, it's not even like you can be, no one can even compete your bid. Other people come in there and just say, oh, we're going to do antivirus and we're going to do this and that. And you go, that is so boring to a CFO. He's like, I don't care. Make me more profitable.
Absolutely. Yeah, so Danny, Keith's definitely been a forward-thinking MSP in that sense, and run to Keith at many shows, whether it be speaking engagements or just good, hallway conversations. But great California-based MSP has definitely carved out more of that. I'm not just going to be the guy who fixes your keyboard, fixes and or replaces your keyboard. I'm going to do a lot more than that, and it's really carved out a cool kind of mindset to have that seat at the table. And I think did it very early on before that became kind of the education talk track at all the conferences and kind of what everyone was encouraging people to do. So definitely some great conversations with him over time on that. Keith, I don't know how much you caught of Danny's story earlier, but Danny's part of Delmar Insights, or owner of Delmar Insights, and has really carved out a cool look at the data and the analytics and the financials. With Segall, who has a great background, coming from that area, from the financial industry, and looking at how can they help MSPs kind of take the next step, whether is it more services, are they stagnating, are they looking to buy, are they looking to purchase, sell, what's the next stage of their business look like, and helping them prepare, understand, and really kind of take that leap forward. So anything else that you've seen in that area that you think MSPs are struggling in, and maybe Danny could help give you some advice on?
Well, I think what I just heard the tail end because I was getting my eyes checked, but I think it's important for MSPs to start thinking like businesses. A lot of them walk around and talk about how technically astute they are. And again, that's a topic no one cares about. And especially your bank. You're going like, You may be the greatest tech in the world. I just want to see profits, and I want to see cash flow, and I want to see management of your business. And that's where I think a lot of them are lacking, is really how you manage your business, and analyzing each client and seeing how profitable they are. And are you really, I hear people say, oh, I make 100% margin. You go, just because you doubled the cost of your RMM, that does not equal 100% margin, right? There's a lot of other factors to take into that, and including and do you pay yourself enough? And that's where I find a lot of MSPs are lacking. I go, if you're running an MSP and you're making under 150,000, you might as well go to work somewhere else. And I actually think that should be higher than that. I was surprised in one conversation. I was talking to a couple, Rob Ray and a couple, and they were talking about the average MSP makes under 80,000 in take-home salary. When he asked me what I thought they all made like 300,000 easy.
Well, Keith, do remember that they don't all live in California.
I don't think that's
The Cali tax.
I've heard that. There's an MSP that's in another state that tells me you can't do this in my state, and I go, we have 2 clients paying those rates in your state. So
yeah, I mean, to that point, yeah, I guess I would agree with that. Like there are many sort of defeatists out there that will say that, like, oh no, it's not possible here. It is 100% possible there, wherever there is, if you have the right value proposition. My only comment was that, someone may only need $80,000 to live the way that they want to live if they live in, Delmar versus California, right? They also may have a very specific W-2, but the rest of their life is more integrated into their business. Not for me.
Oh no, I get that. I mean, Alex knows my cars, my boat, the second home, that's all part of the business.
Sure.
That's not part of my salary. Like I told people, I don't own any of that.
Smart man.
That's all part of the business. I get it.
This would be a good time to say that we do not make tax advice at Delmar Insights. Sorry, we recommend professional. No, all kidding aside, right? I mean, people definitely all have their own ways to running their business. We just want to help them make better decisions.
Yeah, I think that's important. I think that's very important.
Absolutely. No, I mean, I think that's probably one of the biggest discussions I see online. And it's been a really cool thing with the last, 5 years or so, is that embracing of social media for the business level, where I would say probably one of the biggest things I see is, hey, who's using this service? Or does anyone have a good provider that provides this? But the main one that I see the most of is, how much are you charging per seat? Everyone's trying to figure that question out. Am I charging too much? Am I charging too little? And you get a lot of people come in like Keith that, have had a practice for a long time and have learned the value of their time and understand that kind of breakdown, and they've, risen themselves to that level. You have other people who are charging, $70 a person. You're like, how are you even offering those services at that price?
And I always want to travel like Alec. That's my goal in life, to be that first class traveler. So
I know how you fly, Keith. I know exactly how you fly. But yeah, I mean, I think, it's funny just to see that out there. I think that's probably one of the biggest mysteries of our space is what is everyone else charging? And, where do I fall in that? So I think seeing more and more financial maturity and financial analysis come into the industry, I think is great. I think that's a huge thing that you guys can definitely demystify a little bit out there, is, help people understand. And I think it is going to fluctuate to a degree. I think there's always going to be businesses that are going to understand the value of IT a little bit better. Maybe they got hit in the past. BVoIP came from an MSP. So I've heard the horror stories, the good stories and the horror stories. The doctor that didn't want to touch anything IT because he just didn't feel like anything was ever going to happen to him. And on the flip side, I think George had a prison meal company. So they provided food to most of the prisons in the East Coast, and they took IT extremely seriously. They wanted to invest in a full-time tech on site. They had everything really well mapped out and invested and put in growth every year in the budget for it. I mean, there's definitely a tale of two spectrums, but there's also the question of, and I'm sure Danny, you and Segall, I'm sure you've dove into this with plenty of clients. Sometimes it's not worth having that client that doesn't take it seriously, it doesn't want to invest with you. And I know it feels good when you first start to get all of those clients, but sometimes it's better to say goodbye to them. And Keith, I'm sure you fired a couple of clients in your day.
Well, you know what? I try not to fire them. I think I've only fired like one. I just pass on them. And I've talked to people. That's one of the problems with when you do a lot of speaking. They talk about like at the chain. I actually think I've given away more clients from my public speaking than I've checked. A guy will walk up and say, "Oh, I really like what you're talking about. My current MSP charges me 150 and I have 5 users." And I say, "You know what? I have someone that could really help you out, and it's not me." And I'd rather not, I just rather not start the relationship. And that's what I kind of trigger on, it's like, I'd rather not start the relationship. And I have an ex-employee that started his own little MSP, and he loves those little, $2,500 a month clients. And it works out good.
I think to your point that client profitability is something that comes up a lot. Matter of fact, for the most part, I think that's the first question that typically, perks people's ears when we start talking about the metrics and where we like to focus our attention with MSPs is around that individual profitability. Because again, like your price per seat could be great, right? But if you're paying too much for labor, then you may not be as profitable as you could be, right?
That's one of the drawbacks. I argue that it doesn't scale down very well, that there's a minimum price per office. And I would say, and I know people will get offended when I say this, but I go, someone call me for a 1-seat office, I'd go, you're starting at $5,000 a month, which is ridiculous. You don't want it, but there's a minimum cost to me to just service a client and put them on our books and bill them and account manage them and review their policies and procedures and their workflows, and it doesn't scale down very well.
Yeah, I mean, and look, and we talked about maturity a little bit here today. I mean, to me, that's a mature way to think about your business, right? That said, we talked to a number of MSPs who, when they established their business, it was not necessarily as mature, right? And now that they're getting to a point where they're starting to figure out, what's next, like, how do I become more profitable? How do I get the most out of the labor that I have? Then they start looking back at some of these clients that they brought on, right, to get to get things off the ground, so to speak. And they may be in a situation where it's not about saying no, but they have to start thinking about, pumpkin planning a little bit.
Danny, one thing that I think I see a lot, coming back to that, questions you see asked a lot that go back to the financials. You see a lot of the asks around those tools I was touching on, but you see a lot of, hey, what's everyone using for PSA? And then I don't have a lot of money to put towards it. Do you help with a lot of that tool planning of, hey, we're going to help you grow to here, and then we really need to add in your PSA, like a proper PSA, and then we're going to help you kind of grow to here, and then we're really going to look at kind of bringing in, more tools, right? Because I think that's an area that a lot of MSPs struggle in. It's like everyone online is going to tell you, hey, you really need a stack that's going to cover all of these tools, but it's also going to cost you X a month to use these, your documentation internally, your PSA, your RMM internally, right? All those different pieces. Is that something that you see yourself helping out with a lot? Is that a question you get quite a bit of?
I mean, for the most part, we work with folks that are already using a PSA, right? And that is oftentimes where we're starting with some of the questions. But I mean, to your point, right? If we found someone who, like, say, was running their entire business still, in QuickBooks and handwriting tickets, then we're happy to help with whatever business problems you may be facing.
We laugh about it, but I see it more often than I should. I talked to somebody actually not long ago that had a pretty successful business. He was doing pretty well. The numbers were good. But one of the questions we always ask on the B website is, what PSA are you using, so we can discuss integration, some of the items there. And he said we're not. We use Outlook, we use QuickBooks, and I think he said Excel was where they're kind of writing down the service issues. So
I
I
get
think-
heart palpitations thinking about Excel, but go ahead. tell us, Segall.
No, I was going to say, I think, one of the things to just note here, is that the sort of people that we're working with, the companies that we're working with are all different. We can't look at all of these MSPs and go, they're all the same and they all meet the same needs and, they're all in the same life cycle or stage. They're not. So, it's very much one of those things where every client that comes on is unique and is different. And we've got to sit there, and go, okay, let's have a consultation. Let's see where you're at. Give us everything that you have. If you're sitting there making Excel tickets, then, we can have that conversation and go, there's other ways to do it. But we need what we do, is sit there and assess where you're currently at, what your goal is in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years from now, and give you the information and the insights that we have, to help you get to what that is. So if your goal is to earn minimum 150, let us tell you how to do that, because chances are you're probably got the right tools there to do it. You're just not using them correctly, so let's relook at things. Let's go back to the start. Let's go back to the drawing board. Let's see what we can do. And I think that's the important thing to note here, is that over time, you learn these things, but a lot of the time, if you're starting out and, you are tech focused and that's all you've ever done and that's everything, you can't expect someone to sit there and know that, they possibly need to charge someone X amount because it needs to cover X, Y, Z. Those are things that you learn and those are things that someone needs to usually help you with. And that's what we're there to do, at the end of the day, is to help you get the best, and the most out of what it is that you're offering.
absolutely. I actually just
Really
realized.
awesome, because I think most people I talk to, they say we're changing PSAs because mine doesn't do X or Y, and you go, yes, it does. I think our tools are underutilized, underdeployed, undermanaged, and you start digging, they're just not intuitive, a lot of them, right? You look at this, you look at the cover and you go, that's not in there. You go, yeah, it is. It's just buried under this 18 layers, and it takes someone with expertise to know that it's there.
I couldn't agree more. I know Danny could get into an entire diatribe about that. And actually, I'm gonna quickly jump over to say, first of all, thank you, all three of you who ended up jumping in and joining the conversation today. But I do want to just quickly, I know Danny, you had a hard stop at the top of the hour, so I do want to leave it with, what's a great way for people to contact you? I'm sure a lot of people are sitting there with their heads spinning now, and they would love to understand those financials a little bit better on their side. So Danny, Segall, how do people get a hold of you guys? How do they maybe engage with Delmar if they want to learn a little more?
Yeah, I would say you could reach either of us on LinkedIn, but I know Segall is having some trouble with their account at the moment.
Yeah.
Story for another day. DelmarInsights.com is the easiest way to reach us. That's DelmarInsights.com. If you go to the product page, not only can you see sort of the breadth of offering, but you can also click for a demo and you'll get a live call with one of us.
Awesome. Love it. Thank you so much, Keith. Always a pleasure, my friend. Appreciate you jumping in and adding to the conversation. Always fun to get you in here. And Danny, Segall, always a pleasure as well. Fun hanging out with you too for the last hour. And we're going to cut it right at the time. So thanks everyone for joining us. I think Ken Patterson's actually back here on Thursday for another session, and go take a look at that announcement video for the band. And I'll see everyone in Orlando in just a couple weeks. Thanks,
All right.
Thank you, everyone.